Hello guys, today we're going to be looking at a deck as old as Duelyst itself almost. One I'd consider to be quite new player friendly as well is Tempo Argeon. Obviously running Argeon as our general, so Tempo Argeon. It's a deck running some of the best minions in Lionar, some of the best spells in Lionar for a powerful package that's just trying to take control of the game in the early turns and close out before our opponent gets to enact their win condition. How I'd sort of explain the deck is that it's very, as the name would suggest, tempo focused. What that means is that we're trying to get advantages in the immediate turn we're taking, maybe into the next turn, and just do that every turn with powerful plays, with efficient minions, that good stats that trade into their minions better, that our guys survive, theirs are dead. And then our opponent just never has a chance to, equalize the board. Especially with things like a Roar, which gives our minions 2 extra attack. You can easily turn a Blood Tier Alchemist into killing a 4 HP minion, which is massively advantageous to you. However, there's no easy way to win. For example, if you were playing Titan, you're doing this sort of tempo play in order to get to the Titan, and then when you play Alabaster Titan, that's gonna be your massive value swing. Or, for example, in other factions, something like Cataclysmic Fault and Ray, and then you're just waiting to get to that. And then that combo is going to win you the game. This deck does not do that at all. What you're going to do is win by chipping down your enemy, taking small advantages every turn, until you have a setup where now you can kill them. What that means in terms of weaknesses is that you have to play quite smart to trade your minions well, position your minions well. You can't just run away and wait for the power of your late game card to win you the game. You have a quite small window of power, so you want to be taking advantage of your better minions, such as Silverguard Knight, Azurite Lion. They're quite cheap, but they're quite strong. You'll get outvalued if the game starts to go to 8 and 9 mana, because we're not running anything that's at that level. And if it does get to that sort of stage, we also don't have loads of out-of-hand burst. If we don't have anything on the board, there's not loads and loads of damage we can do. The old school combo would have been Saber Spine Tiger, Roar, and Immolation. That's not so common these days, given that Saber Spine Tiger costs 4 mana. It's just a bit too expensive to fit in the deck anymore. So you have to be really on point as you're playing this, and it will force you to get good at that kind of thing. There's a whole bunch of viable cards. I've just sort of narrowed it down to the ones I consider. And of course sorted them here. Beam Shock's probably, well, it's quite efficient. It's like nice tempo. You stun them. It gives you a little bit of opportunity sometimes. Usually just spending the card isn't worth it. But if you've got a lot of card draw, maybe you could consider it. Training Wave is very, very efficient. It's 1 mana 4 damage. It's quite hard to rival that. However, the drawback that you take 4 damage, ideally it doesn't matter too much, because if you get to the stage where your HP matters, you're probably already losing on board, and that probably means you've lost in other ways too. However, there are some games where if it's very close, this 4 HP could matter against other aggro decks. Tempest gives 2 damage to everything on board, so this is quite a nice way if your opponent is sort of trying to get into that position where they're getting ahead on board. You can use this and perhaps swing it back, as well as just 2 extra damage on your opponent's general can be useful as you chip them down or going for the kill turn. Holy Immolation has for a long time been one of the most powerful things they can be doing. It can heal up your guy, but more importantly, it has a 4 damage AoE. You can use this nicely with 1 or 2 cost minions to choose where you are getting this AoE damage off. However, if you can use it to get a heal off, that's really quite nice. And healing your minions allows them to hit the general more or trade better. And the last spell that I'd consider is Trinity Oath. Trinity Oath is just a really nice way of filling your hand back up. And it's one of the few things you can sort of do in the late game to bring a game back. Can be a bit of a redemption if you top deck it off when you're at 1 or 2 cards left. The only artifact I'd consider is Arclight Regalia. It's not necessarily the most tempo positive card, however, it can often be very, very efficient. If your opponent is unable to remove this, you get to beat them down turn upon turn. Sunrise Cleric is a possible inclusion. The nice thing about this is it costs 1 mana. I quite like that as it lets you do Holy Immolation turns earlier without necessarily having to rely on Bloodtear Alchemist. And the heal tile is nice. Compared to something like Healing Mystic, which gives you sort of more immediate value, this can give you a slower burn of value, which isn't necessarily what you're looking for, but in some matchups it can be quite nice indeed. Azurite Lion. Celerity is quite a powerful keyword, especially if you combine it with Roar. If you get to attack your Lion twice with Roar, that's 8 damage. That's like a spiral technique. Additionally, the maneuverability of this card lets you, chase things in the back line or position this away from danger and then, move it in for an opportune attack. Windblade Adept isn't quite what it used to be. However, at 3/3, if you consider that most other 2-drops are going to be 2/3, what this lets you do is it can attack and survive. And surviving is useful because it means they need to do something to it. Either, Bloodtear Alchemist would be a great way to get rid of it. But, that's quite a useful card that you've now got out of their hand. Or they can just hit it for 3 extra damage. And again, that's you just chipping away at their HP. So I consider this still viable. Arclight Sentinel's nice. It's 2 damage, effectively. However, it has a few sort of nuances, I suppose. For example, it goes through Force Field. It can also be used in a situation where you want to give your guy 2 attack. It's also really powerful alongside Bloodtear Alchemist. If you're player 2, they play a 2/3, say an Azurite Lion, and you have Bloodtear Alchemist and Arclight Sentinel in hand. You can place Bloodtear Alchemist on the tile in front of you, and then do the final 2 damage with the Arclight Sentinel in the middle tile, which threatens both the top and bottom tile, kills their minion, and they can't walk up and hit your Bloodtear Alchemist because it's being protected by the Arclight Sentinel. It's one of the better openings this deck has in the game, and you'll come to appreciate this card if you play it a little bit. Silverguard Knight is an absolute staple, or an absolute house. At 3/5 for 3 mana with Provoke, the amount of sort of early game power and control this can grant you is not to be underestimated. If your opponent can't answer this, sometimes they don't want to attack it because you can heal it up with Holy Immolation. They don't have a way to answer it. And it just keeps them in place while all your other stuff beats down. This card is so good. Just play with it. You'll know. Bloodtear Alchemist at 1 mana, it's just chef's kiss. It's so nice. While, yes, it can hit them in the face for 1 damage, which is viable, particularly as the game nears its end, if they're coming low on HP, or if they have an artifact, it can chip away at that. Most of the time, you'll be using it to hit minions. This is because it's really quite easy to come into situations where your opponent's minions are going to live on 1 HP. Well, worry no longer. This is going to clean them up, and it's going to stick around as a 2/1 body that either they have to hit, or if they don't hit it, it's now, are you going to roar it? What's going to happen? All for this for 1 mana. It's just very nice. And, as I said before with Sunrise Cleric, you can buy it to get quite an early Holy Immolation out. And that lets you kill anything 5 HP, really. Healing Mystic is another possible option, similar to Sunrise Cleric. It just offers a bit of utility. The nice thing about this is you can do an immediate heal on something that has 1 or 2 HP, push it up to 3, which lets it hit the general again and survive. This kind of trading pattern where your things are living on a little bit of HP, and now your opponent has to spend cards to clean them up and deal with them, and all the while you're getting slowly ahead. You're like 2 for 1ing them, or 1.5 for 1ing them. They're going to fall behind, they're going to be losing out on HP, and you're going to be winning the game. Prime's Fist is another classic alongside Healing Mystic as your neutral 2-drops. This is really, really nice in the deck. Any minion that's on board is now a threat in terms of trading into whatever minion they thought was going to live or be difficult to remove. You give something to attack, and your Windblade's hitting for 5 damage. Perhaps you're going to hit them in the face with that. That would be fine. If you put it on an Azurite Lion, again similar to Roar, it gets to hit for 4 damage twice. Basically, this just lets you hit things really efficiently and kill their minions or go hit them in the face. is nice. Dartas might be considered a bit of an odd one. It's got quite a lot of damage. If you get to hit them twice, it's 10 damage. It's sometimes easy to remove, but then that leaves Tombstone afterwards. And the nice thing about that is that you can roar it. Also, it could potentially bait your opponent into thinking that you're playing Divine Bond. That's not why I've included it in the list, but it is a possibility. Lightbender's nice. It's probably the Dispel option that I would run if I was looking for Dispel. You could perhaps consider Sunbloom or Ephemeral Shroud. However, Lightbend has the best bang for your buck here. It's got a 3/3 body, which means it's going to survive a general hit. It's got the nice AoE around it, so it can hit a bunch of things. And if you have it survive, it's potentially on board to receive your things like your Roar, your Primus Fist, your Arclight Sentinel. So in that regard, if you're looking for Dispel, I'd run Lightbender. Spelljammer is another utility card here. At 5 HP, it's somewhat difficult to remove, and it's going to draw you cards. This also draws your opponent cards, but when you're looking to be the aggressor, you care more about drawing your cards than you care about them drawing cards. Not that it's not a consideration at all. However, Spelljammer's just a really nice body to be playing with. It's something you can play in the mid-game. It'll draw you a few cards as you go, so to say, which means you won't be desperate for your Trinity Oaths later in the game. It'll draw you options as you're playing them out, so you'll always be able to pick what cards in your hand are good for the situation. Dancing Blades has always been a possibility in this deck. At 4/6 body, it's quite hard to remove, and again, this sort of tempo effective. You play it deals 3 damage, you kill a minion, and it gives you a minion on board. It's certainly not bad. However, I would consider it to be outshone by the Tigress in Argeon builds. They both sort of do a similar effect if you consider it. The Tigress, when you play it, you get 2 damage out of it with the carb that spawns. They both effectively have 4 damage per turn. Dancing Blades, of course, just hits for 4 damage, whereas the Tigress, you need your general to attack to get the additional 2 out of the carb, and then you need to run the carb over to whatever it needs to hit. The fact that it comes out as 2 separate damage instances also has an upside. You can hit through force fields, or you can separate which 2 damage goes where and 2 damage goes somewhere else. Additionally, the range means you can be attacking without being counterattacked, something which Dancing Blades can't do. I wouldn't run both of these. You don't need too much at your high end. I'd probably run the Tigress. With all that in mind, let's quickly build our deck. This is something I feel like any old guard player could do. Knock up a version of Tempo Argeon. And, it might be different every time, to be honest. Gonna start with a couple of Draining Waves. I don't think I'll run 3. If you're running through too many, there's a chance in aggro matchups you just kill yourself while you're replacing away cards. It's definitely a really strong card for Tempo, though. I'm going to run a couple of Sunrise Clerics. I quite like this card. I suspect probably other players might not run this, but I like it being 1 mana. Lets you cast Immolations on it, and, again, it's in aggro matchups. You can sometimes just stand on a hill tile and laugh at them. Definitely running 3 Azurite Lions. This card is nuts. Not running Lasting Judgment. Not running Sunwisp. Not running Sunburn. 3 Tempest for sure. This card, it just bails you out of certain situations. I'm actually going to run 3 Windbay Adept. This card I feel like a lot of people would cut in this list, given the nerf it had a while back that the Zeal only gives you 1 attack. However, I'm just going to play to our strengths here. We're just going to go fairly all in on the early game. And even though this card super sucks to draw later, ideally we play this, either on our first turn or, spam out a bunch of 2-drops on our second turn as well. I think most of the time after that I'd probably replace it, but I think it's quite nice to, to get that tempo advantage in the early game, to start winning early. Why not? 3 Arclight Sentinel. It's just really nice, especially, ideally every time we play a 2, you want to draw Arclight Sentinel and Blood Alchemist, so I'm just going to run 3 of them. So we've got Knight 3, absolute staple. I'm actually not going to run Regalia. I don't love it. 3 Holy Immolations. It's just a bit too nice not to. I'm not sure if I'm going to run 2 or 3 Trinity out. I'll probably come back and add the third later. Definitely run 3 Blood to Alchemists. Not going to run Zoo Herald. Let's see, what's my 2-drop situation? I'm running Sunrise Clerk. I'm not going to run Healing Mystic. I'm going to run 3 Brightness Fists. You could run even more 2-drops, because at the moment I'm sort of running 9 and, I don't know, a quarter or something. Yeah, count that as 10. I think it's fine. What else are we running? I don't think there was anything in 3 costs we wanted to run here. I'm actually going to run a couple of Diotas. Again, I think this is perhaps a card that other people might not be running if they were going to build this deck. But I think it does, you know, a nice amount. Ooh. Run a Lightbender. Dispel's always tricky, because when you want it, you really want it. When you don't want it, you really don't want it. So in that regard, perhaps running 1 would be good. You can hold on to it when you draw it in the matchups you want it. We're just gonna... my plan here is just to sort of win hard the early game, and if they have things that can beat that up, then not too bad. Yeah, I'm gonna run 3 Spelljammers. There's Tigress, we're definitely running that. Here we go, 3 Tigress, and yeah, we'll just come back and add that last Trinity Oath. And there we go, that's the deck. Easy peasy. Alright, I'm gonna go play some games. I'm just gonna do it not live, so I can properly concentrate. And yeah, I'll play the games, win or lose. We'll watch them back and I'll give some commentary. First up against Tony Camel, looks like an Argeon Mirror. For replaces, probably throw away the Sunrise Cleric, just because we're got a double 2-drop, then you can follow up with a 4-drop. By then you'll have had 2 draws. You see Helm of Mechazor, so that's a little bit scary, because I'm not running Lightbenders in this deck. If I was, I'd be a little bit less scared. It could be Titan. Mech Titan's somewhat popular. It's not really going to change what our play is here, although we could have Arclight Sentinel the 2-2. Definitely thought about it. The reason I didn't is because of the Cannon of Mechazor. If he plays that, and I've used my Arclight Sentinel, it's not a good time. However, he does use the mana to ramp out 4-drop. We can actually clear this on board, which is what we're going to do. We take a few hits on our minions, but they're all going to live. We can develop Diotas in his face. We're going to play it out of range of Helm Mechazor. His BBS is up next turn, so we don't want to lose our big boy for free. And just putting it close to him so it can hit. This also means it could potentially be difficult for him to hit our Windblade Adept. He has to like move into us, which I think is good for us. Mech minions tend to be lower statted, so we should be winning the board early. And it's, yeah, nice that we've saved our Arclight Sentinel for this cannon. We're definitely going to do that. We're going to have 2 mana left over, so That's going to go into our BBS and Sunrise Cleric. Actually, we're smacking him for a huge amount of damage here as well. A little moment to think about where to place the Sunrise Cleric. Because I ideally wouldn't play Intimidation, but I'm not super worried about it. And since he has a Sunrise Cleric to hit here, I suppose that means he saves 1 damage from hitting something when he has to hit something for this quite nice Tigress to finish off the DLTS. Just looking at my turn here, because we definitely want to remove the Tigress, which means we're going to need to use a Tempest to do that. We don't have enough damage otherwise. So before we Tempest, we get in the 1 damage. Funnily enough, the Tempest is quite nice, and it kills our own Arclight Sentinel here, which lets us hit on the same tile twice. Moving our Tombstone onto the heal tile. That's why I really like Sunrise Cleric, it just gives you value turn after turn. Then choosing between Spelljammer and DLTS here. Since our BBS is going to be up next turn, he's on 9. This makes DLTS better because we are threatening a potential lethal. If he can't answer it, we have enough damage to kill him. But he can kill it. I got sloppy on the positioning because I thought it was Titan, so I didn't think he had ammo. But even then I should have just played it on the corner to protect from any other open gambits. I have a tough choice here because I have 7 mana, which is enough to play both my cards. But we don't have a route to lethal. I could play the Arclight Sentinel to kill the Wings of Mechazor perhaps, play the Spelljammer, or I could perhaps use the Arclight Sentinel on a Tombstone and leave up the Wings of Mechazor. It's not that scary, but like the 1 damage on here could be good. Though we could get around that by positioning differently perhaps. So I did choose to kill that, but I'm not sure that's necessarily the best play. It's not bad, I don't mind the way I've done it here. I think this Tigress positioning is wrong. If he played it above him, he could have cleared the Arclight Sentinel. But it's good for us. We got there. There's definitely a couple of minor things I think could have been done better there, but overall not too bad. And moving swiftly onwards to a game against Cassava. I've seen a lot of people running Creep. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's that good either. I wonder here if I'm just AFK or if I'm scumming the replace, I don't remember. I don't like that you can replace like after your opponent's done their turn, because it makes me sort of feel incentivized that I should do it if I want to win. I try not to, but sometimes you just take longer to think than they do, and then they give you that information. Looks like perhaps it's some sort of turbo list. Turbo Dying Wish. If I remember correctly, Death's Advocate had some sort of variant of this where you play a bunch of Klaxons to generate the creep, and you get a bunch of cheap Klaxons, and Desolator as well. Run Necromata to draw into them. So he's ran away from me, which is probably smart. I want to smack him in the face and he's not letting me. So he can't answer the Silverguard Knight on board. And I've set up a potential for Azurite Lion. I've tried to keep it away from all his 1 damage guys, because if you roar it and you Primus Fist it, it's going to deal 12, well 6 damage twice, 12 damage total. It's an enormous amount. This Reaper of the Nine Moons is a little bit scary, and he actually gets I would say a fortunate Sarlacc spawn, because I can't hit him with the Silverguard Knight and the Azurite Lion. I definitely have to worry about this Reaper of the Nine Moons. I'm more concerned about that than almost any minion from my deck, given that Fura Chakram is a scary card to consider how it's gonna wreck my board. So I decide to have the Holy Evolve and get a bunch of base damage here, because we've rolled our guy as well. It's fine to roll the Silverguard here, like we're definitely getting the 1 attack off and it's going to be alive, but again, it's not like we're missing out on the double attack really. And funnily enough, the Azure Lion, I had just replaced one this turn, but what it does mean is if he does have that Fura Chakram, he still does get a Frenzy off. Wouldn't clear my Silverguard Knight though, so would potentially still be in a good spot. Once again, a Sarlacc spawn has some utility for him here, letting him take a mana tile. Doesn't have Punish here, which lets me get off that 5 attack again. But the Silverguard Knight is dead finally. And Klaxon's quite strong here. Big provoke. And it means my Azure Lion doesn't. I mean, if he hadn't had a provoke here, you know, double Primus Fist would have done the job. We now have to think about how we're going to deal with this Klaxon. Replace the Arclight Sentinel, since it's basically going to do pretty much the same thing as a Primus Fist here, in that it's going to put 2 damage on the Klaxon. However, the Arclight Sentinel just cost 1 more. We get a castable 2-cost spell. The Tempest lets us clear off the, what's it called? Void Hunter. The Klaxon, and we move into attack. I was going to play the Primus Fist behind him, but then the tile spawned there. I would like to put it behind him to cut off his movement, and it's still possible that I could, but I just decided to go in the staircase just to play around any sort of AoE frenzy type things. See a Desolator come out, which could potentially buy him time to get to a late game situation. And Unt7 just a body block as well. Given our hand, we should probably replace something. Duelyst is going to deal more damage, but Spelljammer's going to give us more options for the next turn. First thing I do though is see what comes out of the Unt7. It's potentially a bit risky. I mean, it's definitely a bit risky. But then, knowing that nothing's out of it, we put the Desolator back in his hand. Should have probably, after killing that Unt7 though, replaced something, because it could have changed how he did our turn. Go with the Spelljammer. He needs to answer a lot of things. We should have enough damage. Given that you can use Arclight Sentinel of Hand to deal an extra 2. And he surrenders. So yeah, hopefully that gives you an idea of the deck, how you play it, what it can do. I think it's a pretty good example of what I might call fundamental Duelyst, where you're playing on board and doing trades and positioning and so on. And yeah, if you pick it up, good luck with it. I think it could help you get better and enjoy the game. And lastly, if you have any ideas for feedback, please, let me know. Because I want to create content to help newer players. Since the game's sort of back and available, I feel a little bad for anyone who's trying to get into it right now. But I don't know exactly the best way to help people, what kind of knowledge or information you need. If it's just basic things about like the mechanics of the game, guides to factions, guides to keywords, deck techs, my ears are open. I'm open to ideas. Alright guys, thanks so much. Take care.